For many years, I believed something that sounded strong. Every time life knocked me down, my first instinct was always the same: get back up quickly, fix it fast, recover fast, find a new opportunity fast, move before anyone can see how deeply it hurt. I thought speed would save me. I thought that if I could rise quickly enough, the failure would become small, just a shadow behind me, just a temporary interruption in the story of someone who never really loses. And to be honest, I was proud of that. I told myself this was resilience. I told myself this was what strong people do. They do not stay on the ground. They do not sit too long in pain. They do not let loss slow them down. They get up. They push forward. They win again. That was the version of strength I admired, and for a while, I lived by it. When something failed, I searched for the next thing. When a plan collapsed, I rushed toward another plan. When I felt shaken, I covered it with movement. I did not give myself much time to stop, to feel, to understand, or to ask what had really happened. I only wanted one thing: to get out of the feeling of failure as fast as possible. But after some time, I began to see something I had not wanted to admit. That urgency, that need to stand up immediately, was not always strength. Sometimes it was fear. Fear of looking weak. Fear of being left behind. Fear of having to sit still with what the fall was trying to show me. And because I did not want to feel the full weight of the failure, I often moved too soon. I told myself I was recovering, but many times I was only escaping. There was a period in my life when I did exactly that. After one failed project, I gave myself barely any time to breathe before jumping into something new. I did not study my mistake deeply. I did not seek enough perspective. I did not sit long enough with the discomfort of being wrong. I only wanted to prove something to others, maybe, but especially to myself. I wanted to prove that I was still capable, still sharp, still strong, still someone who could turn things around quickly. So I rushed, and a few months later, I failed again, this time harder. That is when I started noticing painful pattern. I was not really getting back up. I was repeating myself. I was running through the same maze, with the same instincts, the same blind spots, the same inner pressure, hoping that speed alone would create a different outcome. But speed was not the answer. In fact, speed was often the reason I kept crashing into the same walls. And that exhausted me, not only physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, because there is a special kind of fatigue that comes from realizing you are not just failing, you are repeating, you are carrying the same unresolved lesson into different situations, under different names, in different forms, and still calling it starting over. Then came a much bigger fall, the kind that does not leave a simple bruise, the kind that shakes your confidence. At the roots, I lost a large amount of money, enough to force me to stop pretending, enough to make me sit in silence and feel that something important had been taken from my life. But money was not the deepest loss. The deeper loss was trust in myself. I lost the sense that I knew what I was doing. I lost the feeling that I could always begin again with certainty. And after that, something in me pulled back. I did not want to meet many people. I did not want to explain anything. I did not even want to think about it, though of course, thinking about it was exactly what I kept doing, because this time, the old strategy no longer worked. I could not just jump into the next thing and pretend I was fine, not because I lacked will, but because I was afraid, not only afraid of failing again. At that point, failure itself was almost familiar. What I feared more deeply was this: what if I stand up again, in the same old way? What if I rush again? What if I react from panic again? What if I confuse movement with healing again? What if I build the next chapter with the same unconscious parts of me that helped break the last one? That fear was heavy, because for the first time, I realized I did not just need a new opportunity. I needed a new way of standing up. And for a while, I did not know what that looked like. So I stayed in a strange place. Externally, life kept moving. I still had responsibilities, still had work to do, still had a family, still had bills, still had reasons to get dressed, go out, speak, and function. But internally, part of me was still lying in the place where everything had fallen apart. That is something not everyone understands. It is possible to look like you are standing, while inside, you are still on the ground. It is possible to keep living your life, while some part of your spirit is still asking, can I really rise from this? I carried that question for a long time. Not dramatically, quietly, followed me. In the morning, in the car, in conversations, in the spaces between tasks. Can I still stand up? Can I trust myself again? Can I move forward without walking straight back into the same old mistakes? That question became one of the heaviest things I had ever carried, because I did not have an answer. And when you do not have an answer, life can begin to feel like a room with no solid floor. You keep moving, but you do not feel grounded. There was one period when this inner uncertainty became so tiring that even hope felt confusing. Some days, I thought I was ready to begin again. Then an opportunity would appear, and instead of feeling excitement, I would feel my body tighten, not because the opportunity itself was bad, but because my whole system had started associating movement with danger. That was a humbling realization. I had always thought the hard part was getting up externally, finding the next job, making the next plan, working the next angle, showing up again. But that was not the hardest part. The hardest part was standing up inside, standing up in such a way that I was not secretly being driven by shame, fear, pride, or the urgent need to erase what had happened. Then one morning, I went for a walk alone, very early. The village was still quiet. The road was almost empty. No crowds, no noise, no constant notifications pulling at my attention. Just me, the cool air, the light beginning to change, and the sound of my own footsteps. I was not walking to solve anything. I did not have some grand intention. I was just tired of carrying so much noise inside. And during that walk, a thought came to me. with a kind of simplicity that made it feel true immediately. I do not need to go back to who I was before. I only need to keep going in a different way. That thought stopped me inside because I realized how much pressure I had been putting on myself without fully seeing it. I had been trying to return to an old identity, the strong version, the fast version, the decisive version, the version of me who could fall hard and bounce back without hesitation. I thought that if I could not become that person again, then I had lost something essential. But what if that was never the goal? What if getting back up does not mean returning to the old self? What if true rising means becoming someone new, someone quieter, someone slower, someone less impressed by speed, someone less eager to prove strength, someone more willing to learn from pain instead of racing past it? That changed everything, because once I understood that, I no longer had to worship my old way of being. I no longer had to pretend that the wound had changed nothing. It had changed me, and maybe that was not a failure. Maybe that was the lesson. Later in a satsang, I heard words that gave shape to what I had felt that morning. Getting back up is not returning to the old place. It is continuing with new awareness. I remember hearing that and feeling something in me finally loosen, because it gave me permission to rise differently, not dramatically, not competitively, not from ego, but from awareness. And awareness rises differently. It does not rush just to escape pain. It asks questions first, pauses. It looks honestly at what happened. It does not deny the wound, but it also does not become the wound. That became my practice. Instead of rushing into the next thing, I began rebuilding slowly, very slowly. The old version of me might have mocked that pace, but I had learned that hurrying can be expensive. So I let slow become sacred. I started asking myself different questions before every important decision. Am I moving toward this because it is right, or because I am desperate to stop feeling like a failure? Do I truly want this, or am I using it to run away from shame? Am I seeing clearly, or am I simply reacting to discomfort? Those questions saved me more than once, because for the first time, I was creating a small space between emotion and action. And in that space, something new began to grow. Discernment, patience, self-observation, a different kind of strength. I stopped chasing quick redemption. I stopped looking for a dramatic comeback. I stopped trying to prove to anyone that I was still the same. Instead, I started laying one careful brick at a time, like someone rebuilding after an earthquake, not trying to raise a tall building. In one afternoon, just clearing debris, checking the foundation, placing one solid stone, then another, then another. That is how I rose. Quietly, slowly, honestly. I also learned to observe my own emotional weather. When I felt unusually excited, I asked why. When something looked shiny, promising, too easy, too fast, I did not automatically move toward it. I waited. I watched my mind. I paid attention to the old patterns that had hurt me before. The hunger to recover quickly, the temptation of appearances, the desire to erase the past. Through rapid success, awareness helped me see that many of the things I once called opportunity were actually just invitations to repeat the same lesson. And because I had already paid so much to learn that lesson, I no longer wanted to ignore it. Bit by bit, I realized something beautiful. I was standing up, not in the way I used to imagine. No grand moment, no dramatic turning point, no loud victory, just day by day, decision by decision, I became steadier. Not because fear disappeared. I still felt fear. I still had moments when my heart beat fast before a risk, but fear no longer controlled me. In the same way, I could feel it, acknowledge it, and still move with a clearer mind. That I learned is much closer to courage than rushing ever was, because rushing is often blind. But courage can be slow. Courage can ask for time. Courage can admit uncertainty. Courage can say, I will move forward, but I will not abandon wisdom just to feel powerful again. Now when I look back, I no longer admire the version of strength that only knows how to rise quickly. I admire something else, the willingness to rise with more consciousness, the patience to let pain teach, the humility to accept that some falls change you forever, and that this is not always a tragedy. Sometimes it is the beginning of a more honest life. I am grateful now for what that great fall forced me to see. Not grateful because it was easy. It was not. There are still memories that carry a sting, still nights when a shadow of that pain returns quietly. But I am grateful because it broke a cycle. It interrupted a dangerous pattern, taught me that getting back up is not about speed. It is about quality. It is not about proving that nothing happened. It is about allowing what happened to make you wiser. So if you are in a season where you are trying to rise again, please hear this gently. You do not have to become who you used to be. You do not have to recover in a way that looks impressive. You do not have to prove that the fall did not affect you. Maybe the deeper question is not, how fast can I get up? Maybe the deeper question is, how can I rise without leaving my lesson behind? Because that is the kind of rising that changes a life, not the rise that comes from panic, not the rise that comes from pride, not the rise that is only trying to escape humiliation, but the rise that comes with new awareness, the rise that walks differently, chooses differently, pauses differently, sees differently. That is real recovery. That is real strength. And maybe the most beautiful part is this: when you stand up in that way, you are not just starting again. You are starting from a truer place, a place with less illusion, less noise, less performance, a place where the ground beneath your feet may not look glamorous, but it is finally real. And from there, even a slow step can become the beginning of something strong. If this met you in the middle of your own rebuilding, stay here with me on Calm Within.